Hello students, welcome back to our third lesson on Marie Curie, A Radiant Life by Eve Curie. Children, in our previous class we had learnt how in the year 1891 Marie, who originally belonged to Poland, emigrated to Paris, where she had registered herself as a science student pursuing higher studies in the Sorbonne University in Paris. We also find how she led a life of monastic simplicity, and that she was entirely devoted to nothing but studies, and it was her aim to give her best to the field of science by contributing her studies, bringing out something which she thought would really be beneficial for the mankind. Such were her noble thoughts. She was driven by these noble thoughts, which had led her to devote her entire life to studies. We also found how in the next 3 years, after having spent 3 years in Paris, she meets Pierre Curie in 1894, and finally the two come closer and they get married. So today, children, we shall start from the last paragraph on page 33. I want you to open your books at page 33. So little by little, Marie improved her housekeeping wisdom. She invented dishes which needed little preparation or could be left to cook themselves. Before going out, Marie would regulate the flame with a physicist's precision. Then in a quarter of an hour, bent over other containers, she would regulate the flame on a laboratory burner with the same careful gesture. So gradually, Marie improved her household skills. She started managing the household on her own. She invented various dishes. So, this is the scientific bent of mind, where wherever she walked, be it in the laboratory or be it in her kitchen, she would always try out new things, experiment, new things. And therefore, she would invent dishes which needed little preparation. So she, focused on all those dishes which needed really less time, because again, at the back of her mind, she would always have the urge and the zeal to spend more time in the laboratory working for her experiments. So she would prepare these, she would keep this food ready to be cooked in very less time, as well as, or sometimes maybe she would cook such food which could be left on themselves to be cooked, which did not require much of her attention while cooking. So this is how, she balanced between her household chores, her studies, her experiments. So this is the sign of a perfect person who is devoted to, all spheres of life. She knew that her household was as important as her studies, and she couldn't give up that, or she couldn't give up her studies. She had to continue both, and this is how she balanced herself. So before going out, Marie would regulate the flame with a physicist's precision. So before she would move out for some important work, whenever there would be some dish being cooked in the oven, she would regulate the flame. She would adjust the flame with a physicist's precision. So since she knew science so well, the machines so well, therefore she knew she had the exact idea. She was clear, very precise and specific about how much time a dish would require, and how much how much time she could make use of during that particular span into some other work. So this is how she would manage everything. Then in a quarter of an hour, bent over other containers. So within the quarter of an hour means how many minutes, children? It means 15 minutes. So within the 15 minutes, when she would be cooking at the same time, she would have some dish being placed on the oven. She would also make use of the 15 minutes in order to bend over the containers. This obviously means the files on which she worked. Files, here's PHILS files, the containers which are used for experimenting. While experimenting, so she would bend on those, and she would regulate the flame on a laboratory burner with the same careful gesture. So be it the kitchen or be it her laboratory, she would use the same precision, her same ideas, and this is how she would continue with her work, her daily work. When her daughter Irene, a future Nobel Prize winner, was born, the idea of choosing between family and the scientific career did not even cross Marie's mind. With Pierre's support, she kept house, washed her baby daughter, but she also kept on working in a laboratory, working towards the most important discovery of modern science. So when her first child was born, her first daughter named Irene, who was also a future Nobel Prize winner, she never this idea of giving up her scientific career never crossed her mind. This again is something which is very very inspiring for all of us. Sometimes it happens with many of us that when we find it very difficult to balance with all other course and every other duties towards life, we sometimes happen to give up on one in order to concentrate on the other. But this never this idea never crossed Marie's mind. She knew that whatever it be, she could never give up on her scientific career, but at the same time she knew that she would have to take care of her children. And in this, definitely she got the support of none other than her own husband Pierre. Pierre's support, support was a backbone to her. He helped him in keeping the house, in washing the daughter, in cleaning her child. But she also kept on working in the laboratory. At the same time, with his help, she would also continue working in the laboratory, experimenting, working towards the most important discovery of modern science. Perhaps she had this in the back of her mind, like I told you, the noble thought that she had to invent something, discover something rather, which could be of great use to mankind in general, to humanity in general. So with this aim in focus, she never ever thought of giving up on a scientific career. Pierre Curie, who had followed the rapid progress of his wife's experiments with passionate interest, now abandoned his own research in order to aid with hers. Pierre, on the other hand, who had been with her for quite some time, read her nature, her personality, her quality, and he felt that it was worth supporting her in her research work rather than working in his own research work. As a result of which, he abandons his own research work and he starts following, he starts helping her, aiding her in her rapid work. He sees that she was progressing so rapidly, and the progress was such a positive one that they were very soon going to reach something very beneficial. So this is what this is why he gives up his own experiments and starts aiding her. Two brains, four hands now sought the unknown element in the damp little storeroom that served as the laboratory. So now there was not only one person, there were two people working on the same experiment. So two brains, and there were four hands, therefore manpower was more now, and the two could give their best to this. By July 1898, they were able to announce the discovery of a new element. Marie named it polonium. So by July 1898, okay, in the next 4 years after their marriage, Marie had first discovered, and she was ready to announce the discovery of this new element named polonium. She had named it polonium after her beloved Poland. So this was like a name she had, a discovery that she had dedicated to her own nation. In December of the same year, the Curies announced the existence of a second new chemical element, which they called radium. So it was the same year, in the month of December, after almost 5 months, they had announced the discovery of polonium. Now they announced the existence of a second new chemical element named radium, an element whose radioactivity they believed to be enormous. Radioactive was the term which was coined by Marie. You must have read that, children, in the PPT that I had sent to you. So she named it radium, and she also brought this to light that the radioactivity of this element was enormous, it was tremendous, and it could be of great use to mankind. Dressed in her old dust-covered and acid-stained smoke, her hair blown by the wind, surrounded by bitter smoke from her experiments which stung her eyes and throat, Marie was a virtual factory all by herself. These were some of the happiest years of her life. So, the entire day, if not the entire day, the entire time she would devote herself to the laboratory, she would be dressed in her old dust-covered and acid-stained smoke. Marie would be covered by this acid-stained smoke. Acid-stained smoke means, the smoke is the loose outfit that she wore during these experiments. These were especially used while she would be in the laboratory, just like we see the lab coats these days. Okay, so she wore this. She would wear that, and her head would be covered with dust. Her dress would be covered with acid, and her hair blown by the wind. This shows how insignificant her appearance to herself was. She could devote to nothing else but only to her aim, to her ambition, and she had to reach it by at any cost. Therefore, nothing was important to her more than her studies. Her eyes would be stung, her throat would stung, because these are after all chemical elements, and where various chemicals are used in the labs, they emit various some kind of chemical reactions. When these take place, these emit smoke, which often tend to burn the eyes, which often tend to burn the throat when you inhale it. So these were the various things that she hazards rather that she had to face, but she never gave up. These were some of the happiest years, yet she felt that these were some of the happiest years of her life, because this was the time when she was doing what she really wanted to do. Children, read this part. I hope I could explain this part to you very clearly. We'll again meet in the next video. Thank you so much, class. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Bye bye.